What's a good science joke? Ivan Pavlov is sitting in a bar. The phone behind the bar starts ringing. Pavlov shoots up out of his chair and shouts, "Oh, shit. I forgot to feed the dog." That name rings a bell. How do you tell the difference between a chemist and a plumber? Ask them to pronounce unionized. I love this joke because it works perfectly in a written format, but there's no good way to express it orally. A scientist wants to reduce my body temperature to -273.15 degrees Celsius. My wife says it will kill me, but I think I'll be 0k. Is another one that works better written. Einstein and his wife were going through a rough time. Einstein, what can I do? I'll do anything. Wife, I just need two things right now, space and time. Einstein, and the second? Pardon me, sir. Einstein asked the conductor of the train, but when will Oxford reach us? An infinite number of mathematicians walk into a bar. The first one says to the bartender, "I'll have a beer." The second one says, "I'll have half a beer." The third one says, "I'll have a quarter of a beer." The bartender pours 2 beers and says, "You guys need to learn your limits." Ha, good one. Nice length joke, not too long. Most infinity jokes just seem to go on forever. Here's a variation. An infinite number of mathematicians walk into a bar. The first one says to the bartender, "I'll have a beer." The second one says, "I'll have half a beer." The third one says, "I'll have a third of a beer." The bartender screams and tells them all to leave. "Go away, I can't be here for the rest of my life." Oh, how a single changed word can ruin a bartender's career. Oh, how a single changed word can ruin a bartender's career. I don't get it. The series in the first joke is 1 + 1/2 + 1/4 plus. This series is convergent and the sum of its parts is 2. Thus the barkeeper simply hands them 2 beers. See geometric series. The second joke uses a harmonic https://n.wiki.org/wiki/harmonic_series_mathematics series 1 + 1/2 + 1/3 plus, which does not converge. The barkeeper cannot give them a finite amount of beer. See divergent series. That's ironic. I thought the divergent series ended early. The bartender says, "Sorry, we don't serve a faster than light particles here." 2 tachyons walk into a bar. The punchline comes before the joke. You know what the worst thing about time travel jokes is? Albert Einstein, Isaac Newton, and Blaise Pascal are all playing a game of hide and seek. It's Einstein's turn to be it, so he closes his eyes and starts counting. Pascal immediately goes and finds a place to hide. Newton, however, doesn't go anywhere. Instead, he takes out a piece of chalk, draws a 1 meter x 1 meter square on the floor, and steps inside it. Einstein finally gets done counting, opens his eyes, and exclaims, "Aha, Newton, I have found you." To which Newton replies, "But no, you have found Pascal." That setup seems kinda forced. This took me a second. Clicked away thinking there's another Reddit critic, and then had to come back to upvote it. Why did no one say a word when the king farted? Because noble gases don't cause reactions. Helium walked into a bar. Bartender says, "We don't serve noble gases round here." Helium doesn't react. I would tell you another chemistry joke, but all the good ones are gone. Since light travels faster than sound, people may appear bright until you hear them speak. A photon checks into a hotel without luggage because it's traveling light. Why did the photon get fired from being a priest? Because he never held mass. Why can't the Catholic Church keep Higgs bosons out of their buildings? Without them, they wouldn't have mass. Heisenberg and Schrödinger are traveling in a car when they get pulled over. The cop asks Heisenberg, "Do you know how fast you were going?" Heisenberg replies, "No, but I can tell you exactly where I was." The officer takes this peculiar response as grounds to search the vehicle. Upon opening the trunk of the car, he finds a dead cat. He then asks the 2 men, "Did you know there was a dead cat in the trunk?" Schrödinger replies, "Well, I do now. The version I heard included When the cop decided to arrest everyone, Ohm resisted. A programmer tells his wife, honey, I'm going to the store. Want me to pick up anything? Wife says, yeah, a loaf of bread, and if they have eggs, bring a dozen. The programmer returns with 12 loaves and his wife says, you fucking moron. Why did you bring 12 loaves of bread? And the programmer says, because they had eggs. A physicist, a biologist, and a mathematician are outside of a house. They see one person going, followed shortly by two people coming out. The physicist says, the second person must have been inside the whole time. The biologist says, the first person must have spontaneously reproduced. The mathematician says, if someone goes inside, the house will be empty. I heard another one that was similar. A chemist, an engineer, and an economist are all stranded on an island and have to find a way to make a fire to alert passing ships. The chemist tries to make a chemical reaction to light the wood, but nothing happens. So the engineer gives it a try. He makes an elaborate machine out the wood around them so that it will strike a rock at the precise velocity to create a spark, but it doesn't work either. The chemist and the engineer look at the economist and your turn. He walks around the brush and looks at it from every angle before facing the other, saying he has a solution. The chemist and the engineer tell him, go on, tell us what it is. Well, says the economist, assuming we had a lighter. A mathematician and a physicist are stranded on a desert island sometime later. There are two coconut trees, the only sources of nourishment. On the first day, the physicist carefully climbs to the top of the first tree and knocks down the coconuts. The two drink the coconut milk and eat the coconut meat and are content. On the second day, the mathematician carefully climbs to the top of the second tree and collects its coconuts. She carries them down the tree, then climbs the first tree and leaves them perched at its top. Returning to the ground, she announces, I've reduced the problem to one already solved. A physicist, an engineer, and a mathematician are sharing a room at a conference to save on travel costs. In the middle of the first night, the physicist awakes to see that the AQ unit has spontaneously ignited. He rushes to the bathroom, fills the ice bucket with water, and dumps it on the fire, extinguishing it. That morning, he relates the strange experience to the other two over breakfast. The second night, the engineer is awoken by the AQ unit once again catching fire. He too grabs the ice bucket, works out exactly how much water is needed, and exactly what angle it should be thrown from to optimally douse the fire, and does so. In the morning, he too shares his experience. The three agree that they should request a different room from the hotel, but unfortunately, as it is a busy conference, the hotel is full, and so they find themselves in the same room for the third night. The engineer pragmatically fills the bucket with water once again, and the three go to sleep. Later that night, the mathematician awakes to see the AQ unit once again aflame. He stares at it, and at the bucket of water next to it. He looks at the sink in the bathroom. He stares at the bucket again. He looks at the fire, then back to the bucket, then back to the fire. He spends a while in thought. He looks at the bucket. At last, he confidently declares a solution exists, and goes back to sleep. Two atoms are walking down the street. First one stops and says, I think I just lost an electron. Second one looks at him. Are you sure? Yeah, I'm positive. My 8th grade science teacher used to use this joke all the time in the chemical unit. Love her. A programmer tells his wife, honey, I'm going to the store. Want me to pick up anything? Wife says, yeah, a loaf of bread, and if they have eggs, bring a dozen. The programmer returns with 12 loaves and his wife says, you fucking moron. Why did you bring 12 loaves of bread? And the programmer says, because they had eggs. Two bad neuroscience jokes. What's the difference between a person and a dead fish? Hopefully nothing, so I can keep my grant. Two neuroscientists are having a productive conversation. For reference, the first one is poking fun at the neuromania phase that swept psychology in the early 2000s, where we honestly thought we would just solve all the questions about the brain if we could get a good map of it. Some of the MRI equipment at the forefront of this couldn't distinguish a human brain from a dead fish, This, combined with how, for lack of a better term, ideological some of the craze turned out to be, killed a lot of the enthusiasm. The second joke is a reference to how stratified neuroscience has become, to the extent that two people working down the hall from each other can literally be incomprehensible to one another. This has always been my go-to joke. A physicist, a chemist, and a statistician head into the dean's office to meet with him. While they're there, the trash can burst into flames. The physicist runs outside to get a blanket to smother the flames. The chemist goes to the water fountain with a bucket to get a water to extinguish the fire. Meanwhile, the statistician runs around the room lighting more fires, saying we need more samples. Someone running around lighting fires is always a fun visual. Here's a related one. A mathematician and an engineer are undergoing fire safety training, and the fire marshal shows them how to deal with a fire in a dustbin. The next day, he shows them each into a different room and sets some paper on the desk on fire. The engineer quickly grabs the fire extinguisher and puts out the flame. The mathematician picks up the burning paper using some tongs and throws it in the dustbin. Having reduced the problem to the previous case, he remarks to the fire marshal that the problem is now trivial. A dairy farmer is having problems on his farm. His cows are giving less milk and he can't figure out why. In desperation, he calls up a friend who is a physicist and asks him if he can help. The physicist spends a few days looking around the farm and taking measurements, then goes home to think about the problem. A few weeks later, he calls the farmer and tells him, I've got a solution, but it's only valid for a spherical cow in a vacuum. A spherical cow of uniform density in a vacuum. If you aren't part of the solution, you're part of the precipitate. Two cats are on a sloped roof. Which one falls off first? The one with the lower mu. Two chemists walk into a bar. The first one tells the bartender, I'll have a glass of H2O. The other one says, I'll have H2O, too. One of them lived. One consequence of Einstein's theory of special relativity is that, since matter cannot move at the speed of light, matter that approaches the speed of light will actually see distances shortened to compensate. So the best way to fit a 12-foot car in a 10-foot garage is to just fucking floor it. No, you get someone else to floor it. From outside, the car shortens to fit in the garage, but in the car's reference frame, it's the garage that shrinks. The end. Thanks for watching.